All right, everybody. All right, we're back. We got a story about Maui and the victims who have had their properties and their houses and everything has just been burned down in Maui. And what is happening that has spawned out of that is investors have been aggressively trying to give offers, um, real estate offers, um, amid the devastation, as is kind of
Yeah.
um, pointed out here in the headline.
Everyone wants prime land like that. It's right there. It's
Yeah,
the location is great, and so everyone's trying to clamor for it. And it's not just big businesses and big realtors. It's the government, and I don't know who's trying to protect who. I'm not sure if there are. I mean, there are predators in there trying to take advantage, but there are also people trying to turn it into a different type of districting situation. They're trying, and people have different different competing um, ideas for an area. If they get enough plots, enough things, then they can actually say, "Hey, we can now make this commercial zoned, or we can do this, or they can build a resort, or now they can do whatever." And it's but then the government is looking to they're doing a counteroffer where they're looking to buy the land, and I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing because I think what they're trying to do is not they're trying to stop the predatory purchasers.
right.
But then it's like, who would I rather own the land? The government or them? So I don't know who's right in this, but I know that everyone's trying to buy the land of the people that are missing their homes.
Yeah, so kind of something that I was kind of thinking about and that I was struggling with a little bit was kind of how I, in a sense, view Hawaii, and then contrasting that with it being a state, and contrasting that with it being separate from the the continent, or the mainland,
Non-contiguous.
right? Well, so it's kind of like one of these things where, like, the way I kind of was looking at it was, say, if Japan, as an example, Japan, if what Japan wants to do is they want to say 90% or 80% or 95 or 99, whatever it is, percent of the land that is owned must be owned by Japanese people, right? That,
Do they have that for Hawaii? Do they have that?
well, that's kind of the thing, because when we are, I can understand Japan doing that, right? But when you're
Because they want to
America,
maintain their culture instead of
right,
just being bred out of existence.
right.
Yeah.
So it's a cultural thing is really what we're kind of looking at in this sense, right? But when we are America, right, we are more or less a melting pot. We have all kinds of religions, we have all kinds of cultures.
I wish we had the melting pot mentality still, but now we don't, unfortunately.
True, it's
Melting
it's
pot is what it
very,
should have been, and that's what it was. But now people don't even have to integrate. You want separate, and you want people put in different classes. You want to be able to have like the diverse, like you want to have like
it's becoming a lot more segregated,
to
and
be
it's
like
self-segregation.
sections. It's like,
It's
no, I want everyone to become whatever. Oh, cool, you brought this cool thing over that we can do too. And then this Mexican's like, yeah, cool, man, because they're trying to be cool or whatever, so
sure.
they're integrating your language, they're speaking English. They're like, so like there's a mixing of different things. It's not just like you speak Spanish and you live here and you're competing in the American space being very Spanish the whole time, being very
Well,
Mexican the whole time.
we
It's
are
like,
very,
why can't you be an American? Why can't we integrate and be a melting pot?
we are very much integrating, or at least aspects of America are very much integrating, the notion of cultural appropriation. That is becoming something that is, um, a very negative force. I actually watched this video today of this black woman going into an Indonesian, um, uh, seemed almost like a taro root bubble tea kind of a restaurant bar. I mean, all that they did.
Ginseng, that sort of
Yeah,
thing.
that's all that they did. And this black woman goes up and she's like, "Is this black owned company? Is this a black owned business?" And they're like, "No, this is Indonesian." And then she's like, "Well, you have this or this, and you guys are appropriating black culture for profit." And she starts announcing it to people, and then she
Appropriation is such a
it's a
bullshit idea,
terrible
anyways.
it's a honestly it's I don't even know what to say. I wanted to say like it's a very privileged perspective, um, but it's almost like a victimized privileged perspective,
It's you're
and I don't
creating
even know if it's
it's
that.
victimless crime. It's like
It's
for one thing, it's like, oh,
yeah,
what? So people, so are you saying that like people that come from Africa should just be over here being African the whole time, and they're supposed to be like if they're playing their
all of
if
their
they grew up in
businesses
a
have to
poor
be
village and they're playing
African.
bongos, like they can play the bongos, but no one else can play the bongos. I
It
mean,
becomes pretty racist, right?
why can't
Like
I play the bongos if I want to play the bongos? Or if I'm like, oh, that was sweet. We have the internet. We can see things from all over the world that I appreciate. And now I'm like, cool. I want to try that
yeah,
out. I want to play a digger-do or whatever, didger or whatever they think
the
those things called.
didgeridoo.
Like, there's like appropriation as a crime is a ridiculous concept.
Well, I think
Ridiculous.
to provide a little validity to the concept, I think that if what you are doing is intentionally taking you're taking from another culture without respecting it and profiting off of it purely for the profits, um, I morally I find a problem with that, but I
So
don't
if you
really
have a
think that that's
Chinese
something that
restaurant,
happens.
if you're like a white guy like me and you decide I freaking love Chinese food, how to make this stuff, and I find something, I get some stuff,
Well,
I
that's
decide to
different.
learn how to be this is awesome.
You're
But then I have
already
the
off
most
of
Americanized looking place in the world, but I have this authentic stuff, and sometimes you even have wait staff come out in like in actual Chinese garb because like this is how authentic it is. Like whatever. You should be at
right,
any level. You call that because we're
but
in a
that's
white
not
establishment and they're walking out in traditional garb. That's appropriation. No, that's just like we're trying to like we take this food seriously. I don't have a problem with any of that.
right. Neither do
It's
I,
if you're doing the
because
fun
you're
like
showing
Logan Paul
respect
stuff,
to
running
it
around, joking around, like running around in the
as a
point.
mockery
Yeah,
or
you're
something,
mocking it. It's one thing. Mockery is different
or
than
even if
appropriation.
I think if it's your internal belief system is just using this for profits, even though you like Chinese food and all this stuff, but say you move to some place and you're like, hey, you know what would be profitable here? A Chinese restaurant. So let's make a Chinese restaurant.
I have no problem with that either. But yeah,
Well,
it is
if you're
different, but I don't have a
purely
problem.
doing it for profits and you don't really
Um,
care about the
so
culture
if you
and you don't
are,
have the
if you,
love for it,
so okay,
I think
if
it's a
you're
little
doing
bit of
it
a different
purely
situation.
for profit and you are
Mocking doesn't have
pandering,
to isn't
I think maybe if it's more of a pandering thing, I guess it's more bad. But I don't see it as appropriation. Like what I'm saying is like oh, look at these bunch of robes here. Just go, hey, put on your like if you have a pretty girlfriend or whatever else, and it's like hey, and she speaks complete English. Hey, go put on your fake accent when you talk to these people. Like hello, sir, blah, blah, blah. If they're putting this accent, they're putting you on bringing you for a show to try to pretend like there's some sort of authentic thing happening here. Sure, but
it's
there's no reason why I can't wear a cowboy hat. I'm not a cowboy.
the only
There's no
time
reason.
that cultural appropriation is a problem is effectively if you took the definition of like what and the understanding of what a grifter is and you
Yeah,
applied that to culture, that's where there's a problem. And so this person was flipping out about this, and a black guy who was making an order turned and was like, "Hey, you know what? I don't think this is the place, or I don't think you're correct in this." And she turns around and calls him a coon. She's like it's it. He just kind of flips out, and it was this
whoa.
absolutely bizarre situation.
Who does that?
You
Who
know?
actually does that in person? I mean, you'll have internet trolls and 17-year-olds,
Yeah.
in games doing things like that, doing things, and oh, I just got chat banned because I called someone a coon or whatever else. It's like, yeah, but who actually does that? No one actually disrespects people in that way. That's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
for the most part, they don't unless they are caught up in some sort of ideology. But what this was kind of aiming towards or pointing towards was how um, when I look at like say Washington or Oregon, California, New York, Texas, Wyoming, Ohio, Montana, wherever else, right? It all kind of seems like a pretty big melting pot, right? There isn't necessarily a space for a singular culture to thrive in. They're all kind of thriving together, right? But when you look at Hawaii, Hawaii has its own kind of culture.
Yeah.
And so the difficult aspect that I kind of find in that is that to me morally it feels wrong. Now, if I were to take the avenue of like, well, Hawaii is a state, and states are part of America, and everyone has a right to be able to own whatever property they want within America.
Yeah.
And Hawaii is a state, so therefore anybody can own a property in America. But the problem that I kind of run into is that you can end up destroying the culture of that state and a large aspect of the appeal of what that state has to offer. If I were to go to Hawaii and fly in, and somebody was to put what are they called, the
Allay.
luau's,
Allay, right?
allays, if they were to put one of those over my head, and it was like a white woman, it would kind of take away a lot of it. Just as if you were to walk into a Mexican restaurant or an Asian restaurant or anything of the such, and if you say it's a an Asian restaurant and there's a bunch of like white people or Mexicans that are in the back doing all of the cooking and they're serving you your food, there something is taken away from your experience there. So their culture is a very um, powerful and
I don't.
wanted experience.
So I think that's true, but I think that that's hard to say. That's wrong. I'm gonna say it, but it's a little bit wrong. Um, Cultures, uh, the main things that people can tend to preserve themselves pretty well. But think that if they don't have any value to anybody, they go away. Like if they don't provide any value, they just go away. And like, why are we trying to save like the 13 of this certain species of something in the world, right? Like species die out all the time. It sucks. Yeah, you're like, oh, we're gonna prop this up. But that was cool. That was cool. I don't think the Hawaiian culture is going to go away. Maybe it will over the course of a couple hundred years. I mean, the
Well, it
American culture has
depends.
changed a whole lot too.
It depends, and it could take a long time. But say a bunch of white investors come in, or it could be black investors or Mexican or Asian,
It's going
whatever
to be
it may be. You
corporate. It's going to be
know,
some
it
sort of
could be
corporate,
Japanese. It could
some
be
sort of
Jap.
corporate investors. They're going to throw up some big resort there.
Well, I know that the Japanese love to visit Hawaii. They are probably the most um, they're probably the highest visitors,
That's
tourists.
you know what? I think that's awesome. It probably for
Right.
amazing reasons too.
But if the Japanese went and they are the investors, because I don't know who are the realtors that are investing in all of this stuff, but if it was the Japanese that were purchasing all of this land, right? And then they were developing it, and then they started in making all of like Maui just turns into this very Japanese kind of thing, and then that ends up maybe something else happens in other areas, and it kind
So
of balloons out.
Chinatown exists in all the major cities of America,
Sure.
and there's no China over here. I mean,
Well,
but
sure.
it still exists. The culture is. I'm saying the culture is a group of people that choose to live together and live under certain kind of a certain ethos.
Sure.
It just happens, and I don't know that we can put it in a fish tank or or just put it somewhere and they look at this. We're going to preserve this forever. We do what we can do is we can have movies and things that I like. This is how awesome it was at a certain point in time, and we can reminisce if it ever goes away. But I think we need to enjoy it and not try to overly control everything.
Sure, but
I
those
I don't
were
like the corporate takeover of certain places just because I would like the workers to have some cheaper place to build houses. But like, because unfortunately, a lot of the places that got destroyed, my brothers talked to me this weekend. They've gone to this island specifically a lot of time is that section. There's one part of this resort section, and another part there's like all the workers that go to work on these resorts and things like that,
right.
and they all live there in the cheaper ends, and that's partially why there's a little criticism of how like Oprah would take on some of these people in an area, because it's surmised that because they're the plebs, they're the basic bitches of the island,
Hmm.
like that's what I mean. They're putting they're putting intentions in her head that might not be there.
Sure.
But like that's the type of thing they're thinking about. So because of that, I mean, you already have a high living standard. It costs a lot to live in Hawaii, and
Okay.
you
Well,
increase it even more.
so let me kind of almost let me put it like this because I just thought of it. Is like Cancun. Think about Cancun. Like
Yep.
you've got Mexico, right, and you've got Mexican culture, and then you go to Cancun and you've got it's completely
Americanized
tourist, it's
Mexican culture.
completely Americanized, and
Yeah.
it's effectively void of the American of the Mexican culture, right? And so what then happened? There were other parts of Mexico that did the same thing. They got built up, and they became these little party towns, and became very Americanized, and so the culture in those areas was drastically diminished. It was almost
Yeah.
evaporated for the most part, and
So
so but Mexico is a large landmass. Hawaii is tiny, and so
yeah.
when you take over a large section like Maui, that can have a large influence on what gets developed and what happens in the future at other islands or other sections of the island, and the culture of those places can greatly diminish, and the people who live there.
Yeah. I mean, it's I think there's no master plan that we can execute to make it be a perfect result. And I think that we
Yeah,
should we just need to control, make sure the government and the big businesses are not able to not able to victimize people anymore. We just need to try to make it as safe as possible and let the culture thing happen how it happens. I mean,
I guess I guess my point aiming towards it is I'm a huge fan of culture, um, especially unique cultures, and I want them to exist,
yeah.
live, and thrive. Um, and so I'm very cautious of um, other cultures intruding on others.
So
And legally, I think that they have the ability to invest and purchase and develop, and
yeah.
they don't have to be part of
But
that
you think it's a
culture.
shame if the wrong people do.
That's basically
Correct.
it. Is I mean I have no legal grounds to say like,
Yeah.
hey, these investors can't come or that they shouldn't
And
be
that's
able
true.
to.
I think it's more like us having to deal with it in our own hearts.
That's
It's I
kind of
don't think
where
we
I'm
can
at.
really do anything about it in order to have a free society.
Yeah, I would prefer that the Hawaiian people
Yeah.
maintain the land of Maui, and I don't want the investors to come in because I don't want it to change. I want the
Yeah.
people of Hawaii to be able to
I
maintain their culture because I don't I mean where else does the Hawaiian culture exist? It probably more or less exists on Hawaii.
yeah.
And if that over say 300 years gets wiped out through regular and inconsistent development, that eventually wipes out or drives out those
That's why
people,
a
there
lot of
goes the
government
culture.
municipalities tend to create building codes and standards to try to preserve certain feels of how certain areas feel. So
Right.
like you have to have You have to have these type of overhangings, these type of brick structures if you build it here. It have to like because if you're building in Seattle and downtown, there's historic buildings, right? That you have to preserve,
Right.
and if you build a new building next to it, a lot of times it has to look kind of like that one.
Mm-hmm.
So like they try to preserve culture in that way too, where they try to put structures up that are consistent with a certain era that they like, or a certain,
Well,
that's
I
the type of things
wonder.
we do.
I wonder if what the state is doing, of the state of Hawaii might be doing, is to purchase that land so that they can then sell it to Hawaiians specifically for specific purposes.
I think that feels good, but it's bad. Meaning, what they should do maybe is just say, "Hey, we're not changing the zoning. These are single unit zoned areas. So all you guys can back off, and or you could even say like we're not, or like you could have restrictions also to where you don't allow big black rocks of the world to just purchase it and then raise the price and then and flip them and sell them to other people.
Right.
Like, you can put things in place to stop predatory action from happening, but I don't like the idea of the government picking and choosing losers and winners.
Maybe they don't have the time to do that, and
Well,
maybe what they have to do
I
is that.
think politics is everywhere, and politics we put in the mix too. It's like, yeah, we can't have we can't have a white person living here that is Christian, that believes in, that likes Donald Trump or whatever else, right? Like, any sort of things, they can attach anything they want to that. We're not going to sell to you. Just like there's a story today about a Roman Catholic couple where one is like they're trying to adopt, and this agency did adopt a foster child, and they turned the couple down, even though they're fantastic. One's like ex-military, and he's now working somewhere. He's working like a pastor at a church or something. I don't remember what he did, but exactly. And the wife is she's been a long time special needs teacher, and now and she was trying to adopt a special needs child that was in the foster system, and they turned her down because they're Christian and they don't fit. We think there's possibility this person, if this person grows up and proves to be queer, that you guys are not going to be accepting of that. So we think that whatever. So like, what? That
Jeez,
is an actual story that I heard about today. Um, that type of stuff happens. It's
that's
because you
crazy.
justify you
That's crazy.
because it's the enemy of the good. Like every
I don't think I've heard that term before. The enemy of the good.
yeah. That's only half the term. I can't remember the rest of it because it doesn't totally apply here.
Yeah,
Something is about something, the enemy of the good. Like I don't remember what it is, but
the enemy of the good favors the bad. I don't know.
yeah,
I'm just
that's
making. I'm
the
making
end
it
of
up.
it is the enemy of the good. It's something
Yeah.
like it's it's like good intentions or something like that, or the enemy of the, or I don't remember what it was. But the idea is that you have these good ideas in mind that you have these high-minded ideas that end up making bad things happen because you give too much power in the investment, you have too much optimism in your approach.
The
There's so much
road.
optimism that there's no path forward, and people can just choose to say, oh, we can do, well, this place is open for anybody. You're a good anybody, and you're a good anybody, but you're not a good anybody.
Yeah, it's like it reminds me. I know that this isn't the same, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yes.
It's probably somewhere along those lines.
Yeah, because you
Um,
have good people operating under their own ideas, and you
yeah,
put the government in the space where they're saying like, we're going to choose who's going to work here, or like the construction companies get jobs because they have minority owned businesses, and so there's a construction company that was building barracks on Fort Lewis, and I was delivering to them at the time. I mean, I used to deliver Fort Lewis a lot, and they would get these jobs because they have Eskimo owners, actual Eskimo, whatever tribe people that own it. But how that ends up happening is like, okay, that's what you're doing. Okay. No one cares if there's actual Eskimo people are benefiting from it. All they care is the diversity play on it. And so
Hmm.
what ends up happening is construction companies will instead say, "Hey, hi, Mr. Eskimo guy. I would like you to be part owner of this. I would like us to go to this business venture together." And like
Mm.
they just introduced this Eskimo guy into Joe Blow Construction, and they
It's
incorporate
a
it under the
Hunter
name
Biden
of
situation,
Eskimo
right?
Construction. They're Eskimo Construction. Then you apply for these government jobs where they say, "Hey, we only do diversity hires for our contracting," and then they can do, "Hey, oh look, we have diversity. We have this Eskimo group." So this is an actual thing. I'm not going to say the exact name of the company, but I'll tell
Yeah.
you off air. But like, there's like
It's
an
a it
actual company
it
that does this.
very much reminds me of the Hunter Biden situation of like, hey, we just want to use your name so
But
that we
the
can
more
get
power you
this.
put in,
Yeah.
like, you have these ideas with like, oh, maybe we should let the government do this, so they can really pick who would be the best thing for it. Yes, if you were the one leading that and you never died, but like they're just gonna do
Yeah.
whatever bureaucrats they have in there are gonna do whatever they want.
I mean,
Remember we
I guess I can kind of hope that if the state buys it, that what they're going to do is they're going to specifically sell it to Hawaiian people, but I don't know that that's
so
actually going to be the case.
you could maybe say that these are not. You could maybe do something. Say like these are not summer homes, like um or winter homes, I guess. What would it be? Like
I
these
mean,
have to
maybe they
be
don't want to
like
put a whole
full
bunch of
occupancy
Like
primary
several
homes.
Mar-a-Lagos in there, you know?
What I'm saying, like these are single family occupancies and primary home locations, not like your third or fourth home,
Right.
and you come to visit Hawaii once or twice a year and you have this. So they want to try to keep, if they want to, they can do things like that in order that are set in place, that are standards for everybody, that you don't have people picking and choosing winners and losers. You just have certain standards in place to try to mold it into, okay, this needs to be a section where people or locals can go and live and
Yeah.
try to find homes. So it's fun to do things like that, but that's why the concept of limited government, it's not just about, because if you take good intentions all the way and you empower the government, all this stuff, you don't get what you think you
Yeah, you
get.
don't.
So you just need to minimize it. It's like, yeah, it could be better, but this is all the government can do, or else it's just gonna be corrupt. And so that's why you got to back it off.
Very true.
I hope I won you over in this.
I think you did it in large part. You know, uh, all that I have to hold on to with my perspective is if the state does buy it, then it's hope. That's all that I have, right? And hope doesn't go too far when it comes to government and
Yeah,
politics. So yeah, I think that having specific zones, things zoned so that it dissuades investors
yeah,
and more promotes locals. Um, I presume that that's more kind of your point.
yes,
Um,
that's what it should be.
then
It should be
I'm,
something like, if that's their intention, if that's what their need
yeah,
is, if they need people to work there, instead of it just being everyone that's there is on a resort and everyone that's not there is on a cruise ship off the side, you
right,
know, working in the cubicles.
yeah. So I mean, with that point, yeah, I think more or less, I think you've won me over on that. All right, let's call it
We
there.
so Yeah, so this story was just there just to show that, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, we didn't even really need to necessarily read through it because
yeah.
it's, it's, we all kind of know what's going on with it
Yeah.
based off of
Plus
the
the
headline.
title
So
really basically says what we
yeah,
want
it
to talk
kind of
about.
says
Okay.
what we want to talk about.
Excellent.
All right, drop a like, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification so you get notified, um, and we'll see you on the next one. Later, guys.